Welcome in for another edition of the Morning Espresso, presented by Oglethorpe University, Atlanta's premier undergraduate learning experience and soccer powerhouse. I'm Jason Longshore for the SDH Network, and here's all the soccer news you need to know to start your Wednesday, March 19th. Should be coming out later this morning. USL owners have approved plans according to The Athletic, and we have independently confirmed this as well. They're going to adopt promotion relegation when the league moves to three tiers, when they add their Division One professional league. They already have their Division Two professional league, the USL Championship, and they have their Division Three professional league, USL League One. Now, how this is going to work, we don't know. When it's going to start, we don't exactly know. Probably 2028. That's roughly the plan for the Division One league to start. How exactly are you going to make everybody happy when you've had teams pay smaller fees of entry to come into USL League One, for example, versus USL Championship? What is it going to mean for the Division One league? How are you going to add new teams between now and then? Where are they going to fall? Lots of questions. Maybe we'll get some answers today. Not sure. Look, here's a couple things about this to keep in mind. Promotion relegation across the board has never been in soccer in the United States. There has been promotion in the old USL back in the day in the 90s, and it didn't go well. Teams that went up a level failed miserably. It didn't work. And ultimately, the increased costs of going up a level bankrupted them and they went out of business. So it was eliminated. You don't have the gigantic differences between revenue and expense that you do in the Premier League, for example, between the haves and the have nots. So the idea from the USL side of things is that if you get relegated, it's not going to be a backbreaker like it is today because you're not losing out on tons of revenue that you had added to your coffers, that you now have costs that are associated with it, and you don't find the revenue to make up for that. And you then chase getting promoted again, and sometimes that bankrupts teams. Paul McDonough said, "We don't have huge national revenues," in an interview with Goal.com. So the local revenue is going to stay somewhat the same. And I would agree with that. I think that's a very good point from Paul McDonough, the USL president. The flip side's also part of the conversation, though, because will teams massively invest to try to win and get promoted if there isn't that financial reward for getting promoted because of that lack of huge national revenue? That's why you see teams go broke chasing getting promoted in England, for example, because of the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. So what will it look like in USL? I'm really curious to see it. And the biggest question I have is, what are the differences going to be in travel in the different levels? Because if you start, and this was part of the conversation around starting the Division One professional league, if you start a league that is a nationwide league with 12 to 15 teams, your travel is going to be very high. So you're not going to have the national revenue and the increased local revenue to back that up, but you're going to have increased costs. You're going to have increased costs on players because players are going to want to be paid at a higher rate for a higher level of play. So where will the money come to equal the costs of going up? It's kind of a reverse situation, but I'm intrigued to see where all of that falls. What is the structure going to be? How does it look? How do you handle the Division 1, Division 2, Division 3 standards that are in place from US Soccer? I would assume those conversations have been had. Lots of questions, what the timeline looks like. There's time. If it starts in 2028, you got plenty of time to figure it out. How they figure it out will be a very interesting element to this, and it's going to define whether it's successful or not. I think USL has done an amazing job in rebuilding themselves after the breakaway of the North American Soccer League teams in 2009, 2010. But this is a very important step for them. And do they get it right? And does it continue growth or does it sidetrack potential long term growth? It's going to be fascinating to watch. It will definitely be a story to pay attention to over the next few years. U.S. men's national team, Max Arfson, Brian Gutierrez, and Jack McGlynn have been added to the Nations League roster to replace Anthony Robinson, Johnny Cardoso, and Austin Trusty, all due to injury. Arfson, Gutierrez, and McGlynn were all part of the January camp, so Mauricio Pochettino knows them well, believes in these three guys. The Robinson one is the big question mark for me. It is with our friend Bart Keeler with the Soccer for US podcast as well. That's a huge loss to miss Jedi in this tournament. Get started on Thursday. We'll get into that tomorrow. SoFi Stadium, where it's going to be played, they're going to debut a new grass field technology for these games. It's part of their test run for World Cup 2026, according to the LA World Cup host committee. This was announced late last week. The field has been installed since February. It will be in place for Nations League and for the U.S. women's national team friendly against Brazil in early April. It will be reinstalled beginning next April for the 8 World Cup games that SoFi is hosting, including the USMNT's opener on June 12th. Stay with the U.S. soccer theme here. The U.S. Open Cup, the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup, opened its play in 2025 with 11 first-round games last night. One cup set, and it's a very, very minor cup set, and I'll explain why in a second. The purse has been more than doubled from last year's figure of $475,000 to a record $1 million for this competition. All 11 of the matches last night were pro teams versus amateur teams. 10 of the 11 pro teams won. Close calls. USL League One teams were pushed to penalties in two situations. Greenville Triumph, they won 4-3 on penalties after a scoreless draw at Asheville City. And Chattanooga Red Wolves, they had a first half red card. They went ahead. They went ahead very late. Then they had to deal with a late stoppage time equalizer from New Jersey Alliance. Then it went to extra time. Red Wolves had a small bench. Their backup goalkeeper came on the field late in the game. He ends up converting in the shootout, and they won 4-2 following a 2-2 draw in regulation and extra time. FC Tulsa, one of the more interesting games of the night, they battled huge wind gusts from one end of the field to the other, a field that was about 50-50 dirt and grass. There's things flying through the air during this game that are chaos. There were cards flying through the air during this game, which was also chaos. Tulsa Athletic did get a red card in it. FC Tulsa found a way to win 1-0, and they take the series that is now in its third game, the Tulsa Derby between these two. FC Tulsa has 2 wins over Tulsa Athletic in history now. Other results, Hartford Athletic, they advanced. The Miami FC, they advanced as well. FC Naples on the road at Sarasota Paradise, 2-1 win for FC Naples. That was a late winner there after some back and forth. Westchester SC, they went on the road and beat FC Motown. Loudoun United in a really interesting match, 3-2 win at Westchester United. The cup set was the UPSL's Foro SC. They beat USL League One expansion team Texoma FC in their first ever competitive match. So it's a cup set, yes, according to the paper, but your first ever game as a pro, you're not really too established, and Texoma lost. That game finished 10v10 and did need extra time to do it. The late games, if you weren't able to stay up, AV Alta 3-1 win at home over Ventura, and Ventura County 7-0 win at home over Laguna United. All right. UEFA Women's Champions League, 2 games yesterday, 2 more today. Lyon, they went on the road at Bayern and won 2-0. Real Madrid at home, 2-0 win over Arsenal. The story of that one is the field was terrible, did not help, and should not be tolerated at this level. Hopefully you don't see that today. Barcelona will be at Wolfsburg. Barcelona have won their last 15 away matches in all competitions. Manchester City hosting Chelsea. This is game 2 of 4 between these two teams over the next 12 days. Chelsea have progressed from all 5 of their previous Champions League quarterfinals. They're unbeaten in 28 games under Sonia Bonpastor. Manchester City have won all 4 home games in Europe this season. They have not conceded a goal. They will be missing Khadija Bunny Shaw. She might miss the second leg as well due to a muscle injury. In WSL in Denver, they announced plans to build a 14,500 seat soccer stadium in the heart of Denver. They're going to play at a temporary spot in 2026 when they join the league. This stadium is expected to open in 2028. Could be one of the largest overall investments in women's professional sports team in history. Also, more good news for Denver. They shattered records as the fastest expansion team in NWSL history to surpass 5,000 season ticket deposits. They hit 5280 in 3 days. 5280, Mile High City. Makes total sense. The MLS All Stars, they are going to face the Liga MX All Stars again. That'll be the 2025 MLS All Star game, July 23rd at Q2 Stadium in Austin, Texas. Love the format. Keep rolling it out. I am all in on this. World Cup qualifying, I am also all in on. Let's take a big picture look as we get started with it this week. Let's go to Africa. 54 national teams drawn into 9 groups. The winner of each group, they're going to automatically advance. The top 4 runners up will go into a playoff to see who goes into the Interconfederation playoff event next March. Teams have played 4 of their 10 group stage games. Nigeria is one of the biggest stories. They have extremely struggled. They're 5th out of 6 right now. They've had 3 coaches. They were runners up in the 2024 Africa Cup of Nations tournament, and they might not qualify again. They didn't qualify in 22, and they might not qualify in an expanded tournament now. Rwanda and Benin are tied with South Africa, all ahead of Nigeria in Group C. Sudan, they've been in the civil war since April of 2023. They're in first place in their group. And in this window, they are going to have a top of the table clash with 3-time World Cup qualifier Senegal. That will be a really fascinating game in this window. Many of the groups are led by teams you would expect. Egypt, they have the healthiest cushion out of anybody with a 4-point lead through 4 games. They look to solidify things with games against Ethiopia and Sierra Leone. Cameroon leading Group D, Morocco leading Group E, Cote d'Ivoire leading Group F, Algeria leading Group G, Tunisia leading Group H. Comoros is another one that is leading Group I. They beat Ghana 1-0 in November of 2023. They're currently leading due to a head-to-head tiebreaker. They only became a FIFA member in 2005, and Comoros could be coming to the United States, Mexico, and Canada for the World Cup in 2026. 3 groups of 6 teams in Asia's third round. The top 2 of each of the 3 groups will automatically qualify. Third and fourth place teams advance to a playoff to determine the Interconfederation playoff entrant. Japan, they could be the first team to advance via qualification overall with 3 matches to go. If they beat Bahrain on Thursday, they could be the first one to book their spot. The other 5 teams are all within a single point of each other going into the last 4 games in this group stage. Australia has a narrow edge. They've drawn 4 of their first 6 games. Indonesia, Bahrain, and China are all right there, though. And Indonesia could be a fascinating one. They were the first team from Asia to ever qualify for a World Cup back in 1938. They have not been back since. Bahrain has never made it. China only one time in 2002. Uzbekistan, they're among one of the best teams in Asia through 6 games, 13 points. They trail Iran in Group A. That would put them in right now as things currently stand. They have never qualified before either. Iraq, they have only been one time in 1986. They're currently second in Group B, but it's a narrow edge over Jordan and Oman. Let's go to South America. Now, it's the same format as you're used to in South America. You've played a good number of games, but you do have more teams that will qualify. 6 will automatically qualify versus 4 under the old format. And the 7th place team will go into the Interconfederation playoff. Right now, Bolivia and Venezuela are neck and neck for that playoff spot. Bolivia's only been to the World Cup one time, 1994. Venezuela, they're the only South American team to never get there. Bolivia had a 4-0 huge win in September in Bolivia. Remember, the altitude can throw things off with Bolivia at home. Venezuela will host a big time rematch in June in Venezuela. Can't wait to see how that one goes. UEFA, haven't mentioned them yet. They haven't started World Cup qualifying. It starts in this window for most teams, not all. You have Nations League going on as well. 16 slots out of the 48 coming from Europe. 12 groups with either 4 or 5 teams in each. The group winners will automatically qualify. 16 more teams after those 12 get in will remain in contention if they either finish second in their group or were among the 4 best Nations League performers that finished outside of their group's top 2 places. It's a little complicated. They get started in this window. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the matchups to watch as we go this week. It's kind of a weird week on the Morning Espresso because of all of this. It's an international break for most leagues in the world, not all. MLS will be playing this weekend. It's going to be kind of weird with that. We'll talk about it. We'll get you ready for CONCACAF Nations League tomorrow night as well. All of that to come the rest of the week on the Morning Espresso. I'll be back tomorrow. Thank you, as always, to our friends at Oglethorpe University for presenting the Morning Espresso.